Hello, this is John Speelman with the video version of my latest column, number 231. I'm recording it a day or so late because the software I'm using, XSplit, stopped working. But when I got to them, they sorted me out immediately, which I'm impressed by. Very good customer service. So that's absolutely excellent. Here we are, and I'm going to show you the column first, and then we'll go to the PGN. So this is called the Caissic Hunt of the Centaur, which is a very silly title. I think Caissic is the adjective from Caissic, the muse of chess, and centaurs basically in chess opening preparation are men and machines completely bonded together. So it's when you've analysed a variation with an engine or engines. And so I started this column. I was watching the Sinquefield Cup, and I suggested a variation to the engine, and it found something interesting, which I hadn't thought of. And I thought, engines, they are very wonderful. Of course, we're ambivalent about them. We don't particularly like it that they're better than we are at playing chess. It can't be helped, of course. Certainly in combat between man and chip, or hand-to-chip combat. But they are incredibly useful for opening preparation, for looking at your games afterwards. Though I did say in the column, it's a good thing to have a proper post-mortem, with a human being as well. You want to know what people think rather than what the bloody engine thinks. And also, of course, to watch games. So I started with this diagram here from this game Wesley So against Gukesh in the Sinquefield Cup. And I asked the engine, how do you feel about the line d5, bishop takes rook, queen h3? So I'm going to load my database, which I've put down here. By the way, if you want to move databases in this window to the bottom, then you just delete them and reopen them. You can't actually move them with a mouse, but you can do that. That's what I always do. So this is a game. It's Berlin. Wesley doesn't play the ending. Not many people do nowadays. This is a new move, I think. Bishop g5 had been played before. He finds bishop h3, which is a good move, because d6 loses to bishop takes knight and knight e3. So you have to move the horse. Or you could play pawn takes knight, bishop takes knight, but it doesn't look very good, does it? Going to have very weak pawns. And here Wesley played g takes h4, which I think is a very brave move, actually. I would have expected white to move the knight back, just to go here, something like this, and say, all right, it's a position. It's about equal, obviously. Almost entirely symmetrical, in fact, isn't it? Okay, but he went... And I must say, I would have been very frightened as black here. Actually, bishop e6 is not the move that the engine recommends. It wants to play queen f6 first. But, it looks like the natural move to me. And so, yeah, he moved his rook, but I was looking at this here. And then the question is, if I do this, I hope it's not going to say anything. What does white play in this position? And, well, I was thinking king h1, wondering, I noticed rook takes bishop as well, and thought, well, maybe that's a draw, and I think it is. Basically a draw. But the engine suggests a completely different move, and I have to say, because it suggested it, I don't know whether I would have seen it, but I don't think so. I do tend to see unusual moves more than other players. So it's possible I would have found the idea, but it is a very extraordinary move. And so if you, well, think about it. See if you can think of a move that might be off the wall, which might help white. And then we can, I mean, don't try to analyse it. It's a really complicated position. Nobody expects you to try to analyse this, or I certainly don't. But it is interesting that there is this move. Okay, so I'll go back, and the move is the magnificent move Rook e4, which is 2 exclams, even if it isn't that strong. So the other moves, there's Rook e6, takes, Knight h4 is actually bad, Bishop takes d5 and Queen to here basically stops the attack, pretty much dead. So that's not, take here. You can play Queen, you can play on, you know, material down, but why would you? I'd have thought you're going to play check here, here, and probably just make a draw. I mean, you can try Queen h5, and then we go here. Rook takes bishop, and the bishop defends against the knight, and white is a pawn up, and okay. The white squares are pretty manky, but they're not so bad that you think this is not going to be defensible for white. It clearly is. So, I mean, I think you might well take a draw there. And the other move you can play is you can play King h1, knight there, rook there, knight there, and then rook g2 actually loses apparently, but bishop f4, you take. And this is, well, it's just a position, isn't it? White is a pawn up, but the white squares are disgusting. Okay, but rook e4 is the move. Watching, yeah, here we go. There are 2 moves then. There's rook takes bishop and there's pawn takes. There's also conceivably h5, but it's not very sensible, I think. So d4, bishop b4, knight h4, bishop g5, bishop g4, queen to there, check, or basically forced take, queen to there. Can play queen f5, and then bishop h6 is the best move. To this pawn takes, you have h3, and clearly white's going to end up a pawn up or something with the queenside pawn still intact, so it's going to be dangerous. Quite how dangerous, who knows, but it's certainly not going to be fun for black. And the main line I think goes like this, good move, and then you just play chess, and essentially I said Armada in the Observer, but I mean the newspaper, but the pass pawn should win. I mean, look at them, there are far too many of them. But the other line, if we go back, is rook takes a8. Queen there is a very clever move. Well, clever, it's using the rook, isn't it? And here, I got to here, I was just analysing with somebody, I suggested, I don't know if this is, let me turn the engine on. I suggested bishop e3, because knight takes, there would be queen g3. So rook d1 actually, okay, so bishop e3, rook b8, rook b1, and then rook b6 is a fine move. And if, say, and you're threatening knight e3, which is interesting. There's some line where you go knight e3, get in queen g6 and bishop h3, and actually you're doing quite well. Because suddenly you get the rook across. I've lost the line at the moment. Okay, anyway, so the game continues. And white's the exchange and a pawn up, but 32 white squares, well, perhaps I don't know, 24 of them or something. And that's quite a lot of white squares, and it's certainly playable for black in a practical game. So there we are. What actually happened? Again, I mean, again, there are a couple of times when you might have played d5 earlier. He got control. Once the bishop gets back, it's not good. And here your man played rook d5. If queen h5, then queen f6 just wins, I think. And if queen f5, queen f5, c4 is very good. I mean, this just doesn't work. Doesn't work at all. Okay. That's a very possibly a silly line, but still. So, he tried giving up the queen, which is a reasonable try. The only thing I don't understand about this game, really, I mean, rook takes doesn't help, I think. Let's kick the rook. And round about here he just gave up. I mean, I'm a bit surprised he resigned here. I don't think he lost on time or anything. I mean, he's got to play rook f8 anyway. He may just have thought it's dead. But I think might have played some more moves. I suppose you can go bishop to c7 to stop the knight coming in. And then just play chess. And how is black going to get any play at all? Anyway, so that's that game. And then, so after talking about this amazing move that the engines found, rook e4, I started talking about opening preparation and about the idea of looking not for the best move in a variation, according to the engines, because everybody will have looked at that. Everybody has more or less the same software, if not more or less the same hardware, but looking for good moves which are further down the list. And there are lots of examples of this. I actually went back to the Toronto candidates for no very good reason. I mean, there was an example just before the Sinquefield Cup in the Rapid Play tournament where Caruana played Queen b3 rather than Queen a4 in a main line of the English, wasn't it? And completely confused Dominguez, Linnea Dominguez. But I thought I'd use this game. I don't know why, really. I mean, there are many examples. And so here we are. I'm going to go here again, into here, and show you this game, which is Prague against Nepal. I actually managed to lose it from my database somehow. I must have deleted it, then closed it, or something stupid. So, but I had a decent version, and this is a good enough version, which I've slightly changed, slightly improved. So what I have done is that this is the line, that this is the position they play. Bishop b3 is more common, but Prague played this, and Nepo had lost a game, a blitz game, rapid play game, online, after not taking the pawn, and he did. And in this position, the strange thing is if you turn on an engine, I'll show you what happens. I'm going to turn the engine on. And I'm going to increase the number of lines to 4, 5 and 6. And you will see that the move rook b3, which is completely natural for a human being, after a few seconds drops down to about 6th, which is a bit odd. But there it is, it's 5th now. And if I just have a glass of water, a sip of water, it has now gone, it's oh sorry, excuse me. Go away that thing. It's now, oh Christ, I'm so sorry, that was not very good. Queen a5. I was looking at this position and seeing where rook b3 was. No, b6, sorry, after b6. Please excuse me. Now we're down to 4th, Seems to be fourth this time. It's gone to fifth now. And we'll give it 5 more seconds and it might even go to sixth. I think it has it? Oh, it's fifth. Anyway, it's fourth or fifth. Now I'm going to, you know, you do plus to get more variations and minus to lose them. So I normally have 3. Anyway, so rook b3, which is the most natural move in the position, doesn't really figure on the list. And somehow when you're analysing with an engine and you're in a hurry, maybe you've got a billion lines to look at, you believe it. So you think that's not a very good move, but then d5 happens and you realise it's a dangerous move. Excuse me. Queen d5, rook d3 I think is very bad. Bishop h2, knight h2. That has a massive attack. So you take g5. So he'd analysed to here, of course. Nepo'd taken ages by now, of course. And he played h6, which is a forcing move. He certainly saw knight f7, and he saw he'd have to take with his king, but he thought he'd be okay. And, excuse me again, I'm a bit coldy at the moment. g6 was played in some subsequent games, which I've put down, I believe. Here we are, lots of games. But he played h6. Again, he's having to do this at the board. Now, rook takes is really bad. Rook takes, bishop, knight takes, queen takes here, and you win some material. Yeah, okay. You can try to fight as black, but it's not very... So he had to take with the king. Rook to there, just aiming. Knight to there is a clever move. If you play bishop takes knight, your rook isn't on prise anymore, and you can just play king g8. Nothing too much happens, so you take. And here he made a mistake. He should have gone bishop h2 check, king takes, and then done this, and this would have been okay. But he played knight c5. I mean, it's a really difficult thing to do, isn't it? Over the board. Right, so they got to this position, and Prague by now was no longer a centaur. He was possibly a rider because he knew it was supposed to be good for him. He wasn't a pedestrian yet, in the sense he wasn't just doing it himself. And he played bishop f5 after a long think. And there is a very good line. Rook h6 doesn't work because the queen's protected. So if you go rook takes, pawn takes, queen checks, king g8, bishop b6, you can play queen takes because the queen's protected. But he went, should go queen e5. Queen takes pawn is probably what put him off, defending backwards. Check here. Now if you go rook h4, then there's this move. And if queen h5, there is a hit, which you should be able to see really, bang, and black wins. Actually, queen g3 is possibly still good for white, but you can see that that will be very off-putting during a game, that you're a move away from losing brilliantly. People don't like that. However, in this position, what you should do is to go, after king g8, you actually play... Sorry. You don't do this, do you? You go bishop f5, which should be the main line. Now you're threatening rook h6, bishop h7, bishop g6, rook h8 check. So if... and mates, yeah? So if here, 2 question marks... 2 question marks, is that 2 it is? Yeah. Takes, here, here, here. This very typical mate. So you can't do that. So you do, after bishop f5 you go king g8, bishop to there, and then the very fine move, queen b2, suddenly threatening to bring the bishop to this diagonal. And that essentially is going to be winning for white. Very, very good for white. If rook a8, bishop a2, you're going to win material. I I don't know if rook a d8 is faintly a move. Put a rook on d5, but basically you have a very dangerous attack. And so, yeah, if rook a d8, you could go takes, bishop a2, rook d5, queen a3, and then if a5, you can play queen f3, and you actually win a vast amount of material. That's important. So anyway, and suddenly you're winning. And you win. Quite a difficult variation. Very difficult to see at the board. So not taking an h6 is really hard. So he went bishop f5, knight b7 was played, and suddenly it all diffuses. And white keeps a slight advantage, but Nepo defended this fairly well. It's not so interesting now. And they ended up with a draw. He took this. He didn't want the knight going to f4 or h4 or something. And they agreed to draw. So a big battle. And very interesting in the fact that rook b3, which is such a natural move for a human being, is not a natural move for the computer, and that therefore the idea of doing this, remember you have to look at bishop h3 first, which is not the first move. Most people are playing bishop b3 in that position. Then you look at rook b1, b6, and then you have to find rook b3, and you've already gone 2 or 3 moves past as black, analysing, looking for danger, and you think you've seen most of it, and you try the moves that the engine suggests just because that's what happens, you know. You're thinking, oh, maybe there's some danger, but okay, rook b3 looks dangerous, but it isn't, and I can deal with that. If you think about it at all, and then, and maybe it's not you doing it personally, but a second, who knows if it's Nepo, I don't know what the arrangements are, and suddenly you got hit over the head. And it's a disaster. And he defended himself really well to be able to save himself. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it was interesting. And I will see you again. I believe it's the 5th of October. Because today, well, I was supposed to be coming out on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th. So the 36th of September would be the 5th of October, wouldn't it? Right, okay, I'm going to go again and look and see that I am recording, and I am, thank God, or there'd be screams, though nobody would hear me scream, and I'm going to stop. I'm just turning this off now. Cheers then, bye.